Hey there, welcome to week 2 of our series on God's design for our sexuality. It's called Made. And this week we're talking about how God made us valuable. Psalm 139 says, I will praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. And if that's true, and that means we're valuable, that means everybody else around us is valuable simply because God made us. And we're going to take a look at what that means to treat other people that way as well. Hey, I'm excited to have our friend Zach Barker teaching tonight. Why don't you guys take a look at what we're talking about?
How old should you be when it happens? Should you be married? I don't know what it's all about. I don't. There's so many questions, or so many rumors, so many things you've heard through social media, friends at school, YouTube channels, music. There's so many different avenues. It gets kind of confusing. I mean, I remember when I was in school, we actually had a class. Well, one of the classes covered this subject, and trust me, it got very confusing because I come from a very strict background, and this was a public school system who didn't share religious views, and it got really confusing. I decided to go to my parents and ask them questions like, I'm confused. They said this, you say this, what's the truth? And many of us, I think we find ourselves in that instance where we're like, what's the truth? Since you're at church, you're probably thinking, you know what he's going to say? Sex is bad, and you shouldn't do it. And I understand why you might think that, but I think honestly, we all know there's more to it than that. So let's just start by saying this. Thinking someone is good looking or having feelings towards someone is not bad. In fact, sex isn't a bad thing. Do you know why? It's because God created sex. Alright? And that's something you really need to understand. Because the truth is, God made sex and He made you. So just because it's sex doesn't mean it's bad. Because we think in Genesis, all right? In the beginning, God created. At the end of all those verses, and it was what? Good. God made everything good. He made us for a purpose, all right? So He made this as well, all right? So the same God who created you so wonderfully, He did so with a plan for sexuality as well. How we express it and how we act on it, God has a plan for, okay? He doesn't just create it and then leave us wondering, what do we do? God created it. He does have some expectations, however. We can't just do whatever we want, just like everything He created. When He created the garden, all right? We were created without sin, and He goes, you know what, this whole place is yours, but there's one rule. What was that rule? Don't eat that fruit, all right? That's the one rule you have. And so when it comes to this subject, yes, He created it, but there are do's and don'ts when it comes to this as well. Now look, I realize that even believing that God made sex and has a plan for your sexuality can be difficult for some of you to understand. And that's probably because of what I said earlier, because when we usually talk about sex in church, the correlation is sex equals bad. Maybe all you've ever heard at church is sex is bad. That's something you need to stay away from at all costs, especially in middle school. You don't want to get stuck in that in middle school. You're told that when you're married, then you can explore your sexuality. But until then, you better run. That's the message lots of us get taught growing up. And to be honest, that was me too. In my youth group, we're always told, stay away, stay away, stay away. Don't even talk about it. Stay away. Not till you're married. But then you go into the culture, right? I went to public schools. I went to actually, I think, 11 schools growing up. All right, I moved a lot. All of them public schools. Okay? Big schools, small schools, all sorts. All right? Whenever I went to school, my friends talked about it. The music we listened to talked about it. The videos we watched talked about it. We were exposed to it like crazy. We were even taught about it in school, all right? And everywhere I went, outside of church, talked about it casually. Like it was a normal thing to do. Like, it's no big deal. But when I go to church, like, you gotta stay away. It's evil. It's bad. Don't do it. You get the two polar opposites. So I'm like, well, here I'm told it's bad. Here I'm told it's no big deal. What is it? It can be really confusing. With such mixed messages, it's okay to admit that you're confused about it. The problem with both of these viewpoints, though, is that they're both the extreme. One goes, it's totally evil. The other one's, it's totally okay. It really is, the correct picture should be right in the middle, okay? So how should we think about sex when it comes to understanding God's plan for our sexuality and the way He wants us to think about sex? Where do we start? One cool thing is we don't have to guess. All right, God gave us what? To be able to go and search for answers. It's a book.
Bible.
Bible. Yes, He gave us the Bible. All right, He doesn't say, here you go figure it out for yourselves. No, He gives us the answers. It's amazing. The Bible covers almost everything, okay? Now, does it cover video games? No, all right? It doesn't cover every single little tiny detail in life. But the major issues, a lot of things that most of us will struggle with or have questions with, in some way or another, the Bible touches on it. And this is one of those things. And actually, Jesus, the Son of God, who created sex, talked about it in one of His most famous messages on the Sermon on the Mount. All right? Jesus basically challenged and changed what these people had taught about almost everything. He showed them a new way to live. In one simple statement Jesus gave to view sex in a different way. Matthew 5:27, He says, you have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. All right? So let's stop there. Just like in today's world, the people back then, they knew the Jewish religion, all right? They knew it was wrong to commit adultery. Just like today's age, it's really frowned upon to commit adultery. Who here knows what adultery is?
No.
Who's here? Definition of adultery or sex before marriage, that's part of it, yes.
It's when you're married and you're getting out of the
Yes. So when you're married and you have sex outside of your marriage and covenant with God, because when you get married you make a covenant with God. So you break that by sleeping with someone else or a man or whatever it may be. Or before marriage. Very good. Those are very good definitions of what adultery is. All right, so He says, you've known this. This is what you have been taught. But I tell you one more thing. He says in Matthew 5:28, I tell you, anyone who looks upon a woman with lust has committed adultery already. So let's just think about that for a second. So not only is He saying, if you commit the act, is it wrong? I'm telling you now, if you even think about it, it's the same as actually doing it. It's just as wrong. So what's He trying to say here? Is it just like, okay, so now what? He's saying we need to change not only how we act, but how we think. We talked about last week that everyone has value in God's eyes. All right? Everyone's equal. And that back in Bible's days, guess what? The women were not treated as equals. Actually, women were back then treated as possessions. They were treated as if their opinions didn't matter. They were just used for fulfillment and for reproduction. That's all they didn't matter back then. But Jesus said, you know what? I'm going to change the way you think about them. I made them too. So therefore, if you think about them the wrong way, it's the same as committing adultery. And that's a culture shock back then because the men didn't think about them as equals, but now they started to have to. All right? They no longer could think of women any way they want because they were told that's just as wrong. When Jesus made that statement 2,000 years ago, He was stressing the importance of valuing others when it comes to sex. He wanted us to see that valuing others in both thought and action is a real important part of the way He created sex and sexuality. How do I know that? Well, look back in Scripture with me. Jesus specifically mentioned that people shouldn't look at women with lustful thoughts. He wasn't talking about the viewing of women sexually. He was making a point about the way we value all people with our thoughts. So it doesn't only apply to women. I mean, men looking at women. It goes the other way around. Women, if you look at men lustfully, it's the exact same thing. He wasn't just picking on men. it goes both ways. Sin is not a one-way street. There's not sin for these people and sin for these people. Sin is sin. All right? And also, while we're on that subject, people are like, oh, it's just a little sin. There's no little sin and big sin. It's sin. Just cover that right now, too. So, we talked about how not only Jesus wanted to create a new way for people to think about each other and women, but he wanted you to think about that sexually as well. And again, he's not saying it's wrong to think someone's attractive. It's not wrong to have feelings for someone. It's how you think about them beyond that. So for Jesus to talk about women, the way they're supposed to be treated and valued was different. And it was really the first time most of them have heard this. But Jesus did not just talk about that to make a point. He did it to raise the bar. All right? We're always supposed to grow as Christians. We're not supposed to stay the same. We're supposed to grow and become better. And when it comes to sex, people weren't made to be treated like objects. So he wanted to change that, to raise women up and to raise the men up to a higher standard. This makes a ton of sense when we stop to think about it. Just last week we looked at a verse in the Bible that gives us some insight on how God made us. Do you remember what that verse was?
No.
Anyone?
No.
Psalm 139:14. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. The powerful hand of God made every single person. Any person who has ever existed, who exists right now, or in the future, God has made. God has a plan for every single one of those people. It's amazing to think that when I was, 2,000 years ago, when Jesus was walking on the earth, he already knew who I was going to be, what I was going to do, and the complete plan for my life. And to go even further, before creation, he knew who I was, who he wanted me to be, and the plan for my life. And that's the same truth for everybody. That's just mind-boggling. I can't fathom how someone can know that many people and have plans for all, how many people have ever existed. Give a wild shot.
A lot.
It's predicted about 11 billion.
11 billion predicted is, you have a source? Or you just read that somewhere?
Somewhere on
The internet.
Yeah.
All right, so predicted about 11 billion people. All right, that's
exactly how many.
you know exactly how many people have ever lived or died on this planet. That's impressive. What's the exact number?
The exact number.
What is it?
The exact number.
The exact number. That's all I got. See what you did there. See what you did there. All right, we should value all people because God made them. All right, and that doesn't just include the way we treat them; it includes the way we think about them. The way we think about, treat, and imagine should raise their value, not decrease their value. Because in God's eyes, all of us are on the same plane. There's no better, there's no worse. We're all the same. So how do you do this? How do you change the way you start thinking about people? How do you know if you're viewing someone with value or without? Well, for starters, if you're looking at another person and only think about what they can do to fulfill your feelings, you're heading in the wrong direction, all right? Obvious. If you think about them in the wrong way, you're heading in the wrong direction. Another way is if you think about the person and if you told them that's how you're thinking about them and they got uncomfortable with that, you're probably heading in the wrong direction. Guys, if you start thinking about girls other than, she's really nice and funny and start thinking about other things, head in the wrong direction. Girls, if you start just having conversations about guys, how they're built and how they're muscular and all that fun stuff, you probably head in the wrong direction and focus on the phone calls, all right? So, to help us evaluate all that, I need you to stop and think of yourself a couple of questions. One, how can I view others with value? All right, how can you do that? One example could be, I'm on social media, but I'm not social media savvy, I guess would be a good word. I don't use Snapchat and stuff like that, but I know there are things on those websites that are very questionable, all right? So one instance to start heading to the right direction is maybe start going on those sites to see those things because it's easy access, all right? If you know you struggle in those areas, the best way to avoid that and start treating people with value is to go the opposite direction. So if you have a problem with Snapchat or Instagram or those social media sites, just get it off your phone. It's as simple as that. Or if you start telling inappropriate jokes, guess what? You're not doing the right thing. You got to start going the opposite direction. You know, what will also help is, you know, if you go into a small group and say, hey, look, you know, can I have permission to ask this very difficult question? We're here to help you. We're not here to, you know, just send you out the way you came in. No, we're here to help you grow and learn about God. Number two, why should I view others with value? More than understanding how to view others, I think it's important to understand why we should. Right? Here's the simplest reason you should care about this. Every time you view someone with less value than they deserve, it begins to hurt your relationship you could have with that person. And it could actually make that person feel so bad, it could hurt them and the relationship around them. Even with God. Because then, especially you as a Christian, someone who's here in this building learning about this, if after you leave tonight, you go back out, you treat people the same way, you don't change the way you think about them, what are they going to think about their relationship with God? I was just told that God values me, but yet fellow Christians are treating me terribly. They're thinking about saying things about me that aren't true. They're spreading these lies and doing bad things behind my back about me. That begins to hurt their feelings towards God, and it can actually hurt their walk. See, that's the one thing about sin. Sin doesn't hurt just you. The sin you choose, whether it be private or public, will eventually hurt others around you. That's why sin is dangerous. All right, I have many times have I messed up, and guess what? The sin didn't hurt me the most. It hurt my family the most. It hurt my friends. You know, and I was a youth pastor before, and you know what? I wasn't the perfect youth pastor. You know what? Brian's not a perfect youth pastor either. I know he's not here, but I know he would agree if he was here. He's not perfect. We all mess up. And there are times where we mess up and it hurts our teens. And that's the worst feeling. I remember I had an instance where I asked a question and a girl gave an answer, and instead of answering back with, oh, it was the wrong answer, instead of answering back, oh, that's a good answer, what else can I, you know, who else has an idea? I called her out saying, oh, no, that's not the right answer, made a joke about it, moved on, and I felt terrible because I knew at that point I really just messed up. I let her down. So I had to go apologize. So it hurts other people. And just like our thoughts, eventually all sin comes to light. You can't hide things forever. If you struggle with pornography, guess what? Eventually, it's going to come out. If you tell rude jokes about someone behind their back, as a girl, you know, we talked about last week, puberty, everyone goes through different stages at different times. Eventually, that's going to come to light that you started that. If you start sending inappropriate pictures about people, you know, memes and stuff like that, it's going to come out. Sin doesn't stay hidden. And it can hurt the relationship with God and your relationship with them. So that's why it's important to start thinking of everyone the same. Everyone has value. That's why we need to change. If the way we've talked about sex today has been different than what we've been taught, and it probably has because we haven't said sex is bad, or it's okay to do. We said, okay, no, this is what it is. This is how it's viewed by God. God created it. Here's how we go forward. So in small group today, I want you to think about this question. What's one way I can give value to others with my thoughts and start to change the way I think about sex? Let's pray. Lord, just thank you for this day. Thank you for the many blessings you've given us, Lord. Thank you for the ability to come together and worship you as one youth group, Lord. I just want to thank you for all the teens that were able to come here today. We pray for Pastor Brant and Christina as they just had their brand new son yesterday. We just pray that you will bless them and during this recovery time, and pray that you will bless Gideon and raise him up in the way of your word, and that you will touch his life and let it be an impact for you one day. And I pray that you will be with the small groups as they go do their lessons. I pray that you will be the leaders as they teach. And I pray that you will be with the teens as well. Give them open minds and open hearts. I pray that for everyone's protection on the way home as well. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right, so all the girls are going to be in the same situation as last week. We'll go together to one small group, and then all the guys will meet to the other small group. So Amy, I'll let you